Welcome to Aging Insights. I'm Grace Egan, Executive Director of the New Jersey Foundation for Aging. Aging Insights is produced by the New Jersey Foundation for Aging to provide information and resources to boomers, seniors, and caregivers. Today we're going to talk about maximizing local transportation options. The New Jersey Foundation for Aging has worked on transportation issues for a number of years. In fact, it's not a one-size-fits-all, it's a very complicated issue. Community transportation is always at the top of any senior needs assessment. In 2004, we began to work on safe mobility at any age. Through a series of meetings, we brought together national and state experts to discuss functional assessment, road design and safety, and community options. We spent time examining several strongly held myths about older drivers, like they have more accidents. However, in most cases, elders are often more seriously or fatally injured when they're in a car accident, although they do not have more accidents. We spent a significant amount of time trying to address the need for community transportation options for drivers who would like to transition from driving or for seniors who have never driven. How can you ask an at-risk driver to give up their keys if they do not have a way to get to their community resources, like their healthcare professional or their grocery store or to their social and family supports? We are still trying to examine transportation with a variety of partners like NJ Transit and the New Jersey Department of Transportation. As I said, it's a very complicated issue. Today, our guests include several individuals who are making some headway in improving transportation options for seniors and persons with disabilities in their community. We are joined today by Steve Fittante, Director of the Middlesex County Office of Transportation, Jacque Rubel, who's the founder of Aging in Place Partnership in South Brunswick, and Karen Alexander, who is the Director of Eldercare Services within the United Jewish Communities of Metro West Network, which includes portions of Union, Essex, Sussex, and Morris counties. Thank you very much for being here today. I feel like I'm sitting with three friends who could just continue to talk for the entire half hour. And Steve in particular, we first met when we were doing safe mobility at any age, and you were really working in another county at the time, but how long have you been in Middlesex?
I just celebrated my 7th anniversary here in Middlesex County this month.
And you've really made some incredible changes over the time. If I think about things that we assessed in 2004 in Middlesex and what's happening now, I think you really have increased probably your ridership and maybe even your routes.
Well, it's interesting to think about when we were at Safe Mobility at Any Age. I did a presentation about some of the things that were going on in other counties in New Jersey that I was involved with, including Warren and Union counties. And one of the things that we talked about was the need for what we called life mobility, the ability to provide transportation not just to weekly food shopping or to medical appointments, but to be able to give people an opportunity to get to the full range of destinations that they would get to if they were using an automobile.
Sure.
And so over the last 7 years, we've developed what's called the Middlesex County Area Transit Community Shuttle Program. And that's been an overlay of transportation to the existing advanced reservation services that traditionally counties across the state operate. And it's really a hybrid. It's a cross between a fixed route bus operated like New Jersey Transit and something that's more of a curb-to-curb advanced reservation service, like an Access Link or some other county transportation.
So let me just interrupt. So the shuttles really connect people to mass transit opportunities, but you still have what I think of as on-demand.
That's correct.
So you have both systems.
And the shuttles themselves also provide transportation directly to individual destinations, as well as providing connections to the larger traditional bus and rail network.
So how has that enabled you to increase your ridership and the opportunities for community residents?
Well, because individuals using the shuttles do not have to register, they do not have to make a reservation, they don't have to arrange a return trip time when they're ready for their return trip, it gives them a great deal of flexibility. And so a senior is able to make a decision that morning whether they're going to go out and access the bus service or not. And yet at the same time, the bus travels up to the front door of many congregate senior housing locations, to the front door of senior centers, and a host of medical, shopping, and recreational opportunities.
So there are designated bus stops?
There are some designated bus stops, but it is also a system that allows for flag stopping in between key time points.
Flag stopping. You just raise your hand.
That's right.
Go out there.
Where it's safe for the bus to pull over, and there are a number of places identified along the route, as well as places that people could just, elect to stop at.
And it's a free service?
It is a service that has what is known as a suggested fare. Our advanced reservation services now have a mandatory fare of $2 per one-way trip.
Really?
But our shuttles remain with a suggested fare of either $1 for the general public or 50 cents for persons over 60 or any person self-identifying with a disability.
And the on-demand, that someone would be normally riding by themselves, is that why there's a fee? Or is it...
No, it's simply that the services will tend to be less populated on any vehicle trip, so that people generally will be riding in 2s and 3s for medical appointments and some other destinations.
I have to say, I've always been very impressed at the support the Middlesex County freeholders have given for senior and services for persons with disabilities, whether it's a meal program or transportation. It's, you've landed in a good spot, is my guess.
Absolutely. It's been one of the best parts of my career. The last 7 years with freeholder James Polos, who has been really committed to giving me the freedom to be able to develop this system. And I've really had a partner along with a member of the freeholder board to be able to, kind of brainstorm and come up with ideas that meet needs that hadn't been met before.
Yeah, I do think that's a very unique part, and as you said, it's enabled you to do so many more things. But you've also kind of brought in some other innovations. I know we've used your model of travel training in other counties. And so maybe you could, has that really increased your ridership using travel training?
Well, yes, travel training
Maybe you want to explain what it is, because
Sure.
I really didn't do a very good job.
The idea is really to help an individual who may not have used transit in years, or in many cases may have used transit in an urban center where there wasn't a need for a timetable or for flagging a bus, to feel comfortable with being able to access transit, be able to ride on transit, and be able to arrange for their return trip by transit. And so it's a way of really building that comfort level through a combination of classroom and actual on-vehicle instruction.
Did you see that increase your ridership? I am curious. I know Karen's going to talk a little bit about travel training too, but did it boost your ridership, or do you see it as something that will only grow as people become more comfortable?
Well, we have seen some increases of ridership from people who may not have ridden at all before. But more importantly, we've been able to take individuals who may have been using our much more expensive and less productive advanced reservation services, and now feel comfortable with being able to access fixed route transportation, both operated by us and the bus and rail network operated by New Jersey Transit.
Now, I know you've given us a couple of video pieces, and we're going to show two of very happy riders. So I just wanted to mention that, and I do think it's the shuttle that has really made a difference in their day in terms of getting out and around. So I appreciate you giving us that piece. So let's look at that.
I like this bus. They're always polite and always on time, and the persons are very good. I enjoyed this bus. I am glad that we have this bus. They're always on time.
I think the bus drivers are very nice to everybody. And without the shuttles, we won't make it.
I just wanted to express my gratitude for the shuttle bus. Ever since its inception, I have been able to get to work independently. I take the bus to work in the morning. It's extremely reliable. You could tell time by their timetable, and I take the bus home at the end of the day. I get to go to meetings because East Brunswick Senior Center is right on the route, so it has given me a very nice sense of independence, and I very much appreciate the shuttle service.
I know you also have partnerships with other community programs, and that's one of the reasons why Jacque's here today. Jacque is the founder of the, I'm probably going to confuse it all, but the Aging in Place Partnership in South Brunswick. And I know that you have worked together, but Jacque, how did you start the partnership?
Well, this partnership started out of a need to actually to emphasize the options for aging in place that South Brunswick provides in terms of its housing stock.
Okay.
But once you start talking about aging in place, it doesn't begin and end with housing.
No.
And as we also did a needs assessment back in 2009, and of course the top of the list was transportation. We have 5 priorities, but transportation is by far the largest. And so it was a matter of reaching out to those incredible resources that South Brunswick already had, and finding people who could put the dream, if you will, together, who are the experts. My background is arts and education, and I'm on the journey. I don't know anything about any of the other things, so obviously you have to have key people who are out in the trenches and know what to do. And so we have been able to do that. So our partnership includes the people who work in the fields of human services in the broad field. It includes business, quasi-public and public, and the individual stakeholders. So I look at it as a 4-legged foundation.
4-legged.
That none of that would be possible if one of those legs was missing.
Well, I was going to say, I have been to 1 or 2 of your programs, and it was really interesting to see the room filled not only with folks like Steve and myself, but also with, obviously, your advocates locally.
Yes.
And I know when we were setting it up, as you just said before, I'm not the transportation expert, but obviously you have a way of engaging people and keeping them engaged to talk about very difficult issues. So how do you keep the discussion energized?
Well, I think it's primarily because we have a commitment to meet once a month as a steering committee with all those representatives, and it's unusual, I will say, especially in the beginning, for people, say, from human services sitting around a table with maybe realtors or a banker and talking about these common things. So both sides, if you will, both legs, are learning from each other. And so over the period of time, we have this informed group of really committed, dedicated volunteers who are energized at every meeting, because we all leave having learned something and with a purpose. And I think those are the 2 critical pieces. And we have great communication and great support.
But you've also had some successes, and I think that really keeps people coming. I know you and Steve have worked together, so maybe you could
not have done what we've done this year without Steve. Steve was the person who I turned to. Since I used to work for the county, I called some of my friends in the county and said, I need somebody who thinks outside the box, and I need. So he said, "Oh, do you know Steve Fittante?" And I said, "No, but give me his number."
So Steve, what did you do?
Well, one of the key things we did was we took our first route, the M1, which runs between New Brunswick and Jamesburg, and we made a very difficult decision to take a very unproductive segment of the route within Jamesburg and take that time and be able to use it to go to a Stop and Shop shopping center that was located in South Brunswick. That allowed our route to come in from State Highway 130 right into a shopping center where individuals could access our service from the senior center ultimately, and also from nearby residential and people coming to the shopping center.
So it's the township's first county connection, which is really critical. And beyond that important, Steve has been part of our transportation committee since the inception. And we started with Representative Ron Schmaltz from the township, and Steve, and the former mayor of the township. And we met at what was then Buckingham Place, and that's where we started putting things together, getting to know each other, and finding what we could do and what our resources represented. And that's how the transportation basics began, with that kind of help. And now we're filling in the gaps to that, getting there to that bus.
It's incremental, but I know you have another exciting thing that's happening, so maybe you could share that with us too.
Well, the first really was this M1 bus stop. That was really incredible. The next little step that's been taken is we now have a township bus from the senior center to that M1 bus stop once a week, but it's going to be more as we grow. But the newest one, which is the really critical piece, I think most people would agree to, is we're beginning a new program called Community Car, which starts in April, which will bring volunteer drivers and volunteer riders together under a plan that's been working very well up in North Bergen called Meadowlink. And and we're going to be his pilot, Krishna Murthy's pilot program, to see what he's been doing with counties and large cities can work in a suburban community. And I think it's going to make all the difference in the world.
Right. Do you see that as you have volunteers that will be the drivers, and is it a membership, or will people pay for rides?
They pay a membership, $15 for the year, and it's door-to-door pickup, and it's mileage. It's 51 cents a mile, and we're not looking to make long trips.
Right.
This is really a goal to be able to hook up individuals to the existing public transportation, the M1 bus and others that are available in the community, which is not available other than by taxi at this point.
And I'm guessing it might be door through door? So
It's door.
someone
It
would
could
able
be.
to,
Yes, I'm sure that can be.
yeah, I guess for our viewers, I guess door for door is different than curb to curb. Door through door is someone who might need some assistance walking out of their house, down the steps, into the car, and likewise when they get to their destination might need help again, and that's the concept of door through door.
Well, knowing the number of volunteer drivers we have even without this program,
Really?
I'm sure that that's a real possibility and something that would continue. I know how
Well, Karen's
desirable.
going to want this. Karen's going to want this.
I think everybody's going to want it.
Exactly. And so I want Karen to explain what she's been able to do with Metro West and some of the buildings that she works with. I know again, transportation is always at the top of the list, and while many of your buildings are in more urban situations that have transportation, it's still not necessarily serving the residents. So why don't you tell us what you're trying to do?
Sure, absolutely. United Jewish Communities of Metro West New Jersey 7 years ago secured a grant from the federal government to create an aging in place community, a naturally occurring retirement community program. Our initial community was in Parsippany, and subsequently we were able to secure additional grants to replicate and expand into Caldwell and then Verona. And
Into buildings you have there?
into
as
the
opposed to
communities
okay.
of,
Okay.
as opposed to dedicated buildings, we actually look at community-wide
Okay.
initiatives. And part of the reason we really focused on Caldwell and then Verona was what we call the Bloomfield Avenue corridor. Both of those communities are small, they're dense, they're walkable, and they're well served by New Jersey Transit. And we worked in partnership with Dept, which is an organization that trains people how to use public transportation, that's also worked in Middlesex County. Because once we talked to hundreds of seniors in those communities and heard what their greatest concerns were, a lot of them had to do with mobility and access. And because we knew these communities were well served by public transportation,
Right.
the natural opportunity was to help acquaint people with literally what was on Main Street.
Right.
And so what we did is brought in Dept to work with groups of older adults, teach them about the available transportation services, not only New Jersey Transit, but also Access Link, Metro Transport, Essex County Special Transportation, the services that each of the towns operated, all of which are, very specific.
Right. It sounds like we have a lot of transportation options, but it's making them all connect and
Right.
serve the
Absolutely.
residents.
Right. What you get in Caldwell is different than what you get in Verona, for example, because the towns provide different kinds of support. And actually, on the coffee table, I have the guides that we developed for each of those communities. And I want to show you to the point where we even created
map.
maps on the inside that showed where the bus stops were to help the seniors who lived in those communities understand once they got to their corner, where they could go.
Right.
And what the destinations were that were easily within reach.
That ties right in with the guide that we're working on.
Exactly.
And I think it's really an important story that Pat Kay, who's on our steering committee, who represents the blind community, has traveled the M1 bus route back and forth with a sighted helper,
Right.
and is creating a guide. Just I'm going to borrow or take one of these. I'd
be happy to share.
Because we don't have to create from nothing. We've got so many resources to turn
Exactly.
to. So I know Pat will love that.
Yeah. And the thing is, I think also the scheduling that you must have advertised to your shuttles. I mean, I think telling people,
Well, so much of what we learned is that people just don't know what's available in their
Exactly.
community. And particularly for people who've been driving for a long time,
Right.
it's just sort of a big blank.
Right.
So true.
And so helping fill in that blank with, here are some of the options, and not turning it into a binary, give me your car keys and
Right.
get on the bus.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
rather, maybe while you're still driving, but you're thinking about dialing it back a little bit, or you don't really want to be driving if you're going to be out after dark, or you don't want to go in bad weather.
Right.
Let me, acquaint you with some of the other options that are available
Sure.
in the community. And then, of course, that's supported by the expense of keeping a car versus, the cost
true.
savings associated with using public transportation. And I think for our model, because it's so community-based, what we've seen is that we do this group education and then we do trips on the bus. And we've found that the Montclair Art Museum is a very popular destination right on Bloomfield Avenue. But we've had our trainers go back out on the bus and run into seniors who we trained training other people.
There you go.
They're showing their friends how to
Right.
use the bus because now it's a skill they have.
Magic.
And that really sort of has led to where we're developing next, which is taking this natural occurrence and really formalizing it into a program of transit ambassadors or mobility mavens, folks who can really be peer leaders
Right.
within their communities and resource people, because it's happening naturally. So we want to capitalize on that.
Right. And I can see that it also will have a sustainability. When you do the training, it'll be someone encouraging people to, come on, let's take a day out, let's go to, as you said, the Montclair Museum or some other place.
Right, and I think one of the other pieces that we're really focusing on is we found this training to be most effective when we base it at a senior housing building, a location where a lot of older adults live, because now you've got half of the equation. You've got the origin. The other
Right.
piece is the destination,
Right.
and the piece in between is what's the trip purpose.
Right.
So if you can play with those three pieces, once you've got a shared origin, you've got a lot of efficiency to start talking from. And to some degree, working with older adults about the trip purpose, I need to go grocery shopping, as opposed to, I must go to the Kings in Morristown.
Right.
And getting them to frame, I need to go grocery shopping, and there's all these stores on Bloomfield Avenue. I can go to Jacque's, I can go to Stop and Shop, I can go to ShopRite. And then that becomes part of their sphere of accessibility, their sphere of mobility. And now they're in control, instead of waiting for someone to take them to the Kings in Morristown.
Right.
And that is very exciting in terms of empowerment and independence.
It's funny, you have each touched on it in a different way, and yet at the same time, I want our viewers to know how they can access more information about transportation in their own communities. And I know we have NJ Find a Ride, which is a really online service that people can go and see. And I presume that your shuttles are listed there?
Yes, and Grace, I want to share one important initiative that has happened over the last 3 months. It's actually happened over the last 2 years. There is a program under Google known as Google Transit.
Okay.
Very similar to MapQuest for auto directions. Google Transit provides an individual who can enter in their trip origin, destination, and time, and actually get a manifest that describes the distance that they would be walking
That's
to
wonderful.
access transit and the transit connections they'd be making. This is going to be a wonderful tool for the future as our senior populations are retirees
Right.
who have been exposed to computers. This is
Right.
going to enable them to find out what services are within walking distance of their door.
Yeah.
And
how to
that's
get
been
there.
important.
And how to get
Exactly.
there. The other, for people that are not necessarily online, we do have 211. And 211 is for all human services, but transportation is obviously one of the things. Have you found that? Have you utilized it at all,
Well,
Jacque?
we're just beginning to get that word out, but I want
Okay.
to add one thing to what Karen had to say, that in South Brunswick, we work a lot on ideas of intergenerational. We're very
Absolutely.
committed to that. And one of the things that we're working towards getting off the ground is having our high school kids become those aides or partners to the seniors.
Travel partners.
Guides, travel partners, so that there's two prongs. Not
Right.
only are we marrying the
Right.
generations, but the seniors are going to have helpers, and also the high school
Nice.
kids are going to learn
Right.
how to use that bus as opposed to driving their cars.
Well, I think that's a wonderful idea, and I also want to mention that there are some other sources of information in terms of travel. And I think the county offices on aging are obviously a place that we always refer people to for services as well as transportation information. And then obviously programs like yours, Steve. Every county has a county transportation
That's
program.
correct. In Middlesex County, we have an 800 number that provides an individual who may not want to be able to use a computer to be able to call and actually get information about the services.
Sure.
And the same is true with New Jersey Transit and the other 21 county coordinated systems.
Right. And I know we have a lot of other nonprofit community groups that are also doing transportation, and hopefully they are listed on 211 and on New Jersey Find a Ride. And so I think that's a very important resource.
Grace, I also just want to say that because this is so idiosyncratic by community, starting with your own Office on Aging, if you have one in your town,
Right.
is really
Municipal.
important because you may be able to find that shopping trips are available that way or medical trips are
Right,
available that way.
exactly.
And depending on your need, it also helps the folks who are closest to you be aware that you're in the community and that you may be interested in other kinds of supports.
I think that's an excellent point. I think the one thing we've identified today is that transportation is obviously a high need, and it's not necessarily, as I said in the beginning, a one-size-fits-all, and there are a lot of places to go for the information. Did you want
I
to say
just
one?
wanted to say in South Brunswick, and because of our partners, the library, the senior center,
Exactly.
all those sources have information, or they know who
Yes.
to get.
Exactly, and
So-
that's wonderful. So I do want to thank you again for coming. We want to remind you to find out about senior services in your area, including county transportation services. So please contact your county offices on aging or the Aging and Disability Resource Connection. You can also go on the NJ Transit website. You will see a listing of the County Office on Aging numbers on our website, or you may call the state hotline, which is 1-877-222-3737. We appreciate you joining us for this edition of Aging Insights. Until next time, take care, and remember, aging is everyone's business.